What up, Razzballers? Welcome back to the program. Week 8 in the books. Week 9 up ahead of us. We're back to some bye weeks. Niners and Steelers on bye this week, but we might get Christian McCaffrey back next week. We'll see what happens. We got a couple movements here. We got some new starters. We got some players out for the season, and we do have a wide receiver trade along with your Week 9 waiver and trade targets right now on the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. What up, everybody? Welcome back to the program. I'm your host, Sky Guasco. It's been a couple episodes for me. I've been out doing dad duty as well and on the road, but we're handling the business back on a Tuesday waiver show. Here we got Jefferson up in the top corner. That's Jefferson _ Deuce 1. And Dave Cruz sitting in for Matty Styles, who coincidentally, or maybe synchronistically, as I like to think, is actually headed out to a cruise on his own cruise there. So that's Cruiser 128. We got a lot going on here. You can find me on the Xbox as well. That's Sky Guasco. Find everything Razzball, RAZZBALL, NFL on X. You can find us right here on YouTube. Hit that bell, subscribe. Make sure you don't miss any of our articles and all of our episodes all week long. And most importantly, Sunday mornings, everybody, 2 hours before kickoff, we got the Sunday live show. You get a kind of a mirage of a number of us analysts here at Razzball, people popping in, popping out every single week. Check us out. Anybody wanting to catch up after the fact on the podcast, all of our episodes, except for the Sunday Money shows, are repurposed to podcast form. So if you're listening to audio, go and check those out anywhere you download your music and your audio on the podcast form. That is the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast Show, and all of our great writers and articles and exclusive tools available for you at football.razzball.com. Gentlemen, good evening. Josh already in there asking about trade targets, and we have some other guys ahead of time. We also have a couple, maybe not so breaking news at this point of the day and the week. However, for our show, it is certainly something we need to talk about up front. So we'll keep the pleasantries to a minimum. We got a lot to cover tonight. Dave is going to cover Matt's article per usual on the waiver side. Jeff's going to give some feedback, and I have a couple trade targets. But before we do that, gentlemen, two guys, unfortunately, two wide receivers leaving us for the season. That's Stephon Diggs out for Houston, and your boy Christian Kirk, Jeff, out for Jaguars. Then we have Deontay Johnson moving again, just went from the Steelers to the Panthers preseason. Now he goes over to the Ravens as well, back into that North Division. What does that mean for the Ravens? And Joe Flacco, officially the starter, and probably for the rest of the season, assuming he's healthy. Anthony Richardson just isn't it yet for the Colts. So Bob fishes his wish there. Gentlemen, there's a lot to pick through. Jeff, I'm going to start with you, then we'll go to Dave. Give me what the move there you think is most impactful of those four I mentioned, and then we'll get into the waiver article. Jeff, you can go first.
Yeah, I think this might shock some people, but I think it's actually Joe Flacco. Reason being, he elevates that receiving core now. Michael Pittman emerges back as an every week starter. Josh Downs enters that flex starter. I think Jonathan Taylor can have a reliable quarterback now. So I think the Colts offense just as a whole is better, and I think that makes a larger impact on a handful of more players. Kirk sucks for my Jags. Maybe this just means more targets for Evan Ingram, but Brian Thomas is hurt too. So just the Jags in general, it's bad news for them. But ultimately, I think Flacco starting. We've seen it. We know what the Colts do with him as a quarterback as opposed to Richardson. So we've seen it. So I think we know what to expect moving forward out of the Colts.
Dave, how about you?
Yeah, for me, Deontay Johnson moving to Baltimore is certainly a big sounding move. But, I'm going to say it's probably going to be a couple of weeks before he gets up to speed. And, I'm still probably going to be hanging with Bateman as the wide receiver 2 until at least week 11. And I don't think, even with Deontay being there, I don't think it changes the identity of the team. I think he just kind of slots in a couple of weeks as the wide receiver 2, rather than saying, okay, now Lamar's going to start throwing the ball 40 times a game. I think the team doesn't change the identity. I think they're still a run-first team.
And you still think Zay Flowers is definitely the number one there?
Well, certainly until he isn't. Right? Because he's been there. He knows the system. He knows the terminology. It's not something you don't just walk in off the street and become the guy.
Sure.
Right. Even Christian McCaffrey took a couple of weeks to get up to speed in San Francisco.
Yep. Fair enough. And hopefully the Niners will get Christian McCaffrey back. Although with Isaac Correndo, maybe they don't, need McCaffrey very quickly, but they're not going to play a porous defense like Dallas every week. Josh has tuned in already. Let's get into some quick trade talk and a couple quick questions. You're welcome to drop your questions into the chat bar here on YouTube, and we'll get to as many of those as we possibly can during the episode. We'll get to a couple of these here from Josh, and then Dave, I'll let you take it away on Matt's article. Trade Dell and Mostert for James Cook. So basically just what side of this fence do you guys want? Here's the team. 16-man PPR. 16. So these rosters are obviously very deep. Dak, Achane, Mostert, Lamb, DJ Moore, and Njoku, and Dell. Notable bench guys, Downs, Charbonnet, Russ, and Caleb Williams. So looks like 16-man PPR league. Would you rather have Dell and Mostert or James Cook? Dave, I'll go with you first on this one.
Well, I mean, if I could make that trade, I would make it in a heartbeat. But if I'm the James Cook side, I'm not real excited for Dell and Mostert. You've got a guy that's pretty much the guy in Buffalo, right? And you're offering me a wide receiver 2 and a 32-year-old for a front of the line running back. So, I mean, if you can make the trade, I'm making it. But if I'm the Cook guy, I'm probably going to try to negotiate a better deal.
Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get Cook, obviously make that trade. But like as mentioned earlier, I don't see why you would trade Cook for those two. Maybe you're excited about Tank Dell with the news of Diggs, but Nico Collins is coming back right around the corner. So, give me Cook.
Yeah, interesting call here. I'm going to jump the gun a little bit here. I would start Downs instead of Dell. He said might be better options rest of the season anyway. And Jamie, we see you in there, bud. Great to see you. Good evening. I'm going to jump the gun a little bit here and kind of just give away one of my trade 4s. And it is Tank Dell. With Stephon Diggs going down, Tank Dell's not what he was last year when healthy as a rookie. He obviously burst on the scene and absolutely dominated, but Collins is still out, coming back hopefully sometime soon, but not 100%. This offense just needs a spark. Last year it was Tank Dell, and I think that he'll have another opportunity when he gets there. He hasn't really hit speed yet, but he ran a route on 75% of dropbacks. He's getting the red zone targets, and he did score. He's also seeing his air yard starting to creep up instead of just that PPR guy because the deep threats are gone. So somebody has to get in there, and Hutchinson may not be that guy long term. So I do like Tank Dell to acquire him, but like the guys have said, if this is just on the table, I don't see James Cook going away for Dell and Mostert. But if you can acquire Dell, I would like that. Mostert put himself back on the map, obviously with the score, but that's Achane's squad there. Now, Mostert and Achane is a nice handcuff, so I do like that. But I just don't know that you'll be able to actually make this move. But Josh, we appreciate you tuning in early. Anybody else that wants to drop in a trade inquiry or your start sits for week 9, now would be the time to drop them in there. Dave, I have talked too much. I'm going to get a sip of water and turn it over to you, my man. I'm going to give you a few minutes to drop by Matty Styles' article. Matt again away, but Dave's stepping up once again for the pinch hit. I'm going to let you take it away here. You can find Matt's article available with all of our articles from Dave, Jeff, Matt, and everybody else here at the Razzball Squad on football.razzball.com. Dave, I'm going to give you a few minutes. Why don't we knock out those top waiver ads for week 9?
Let's get it done. We'll start with the quarterbacks, and Matt's ad of the week in the quarterback is Jameis Winston. And even though he's got a kind of a tough matchup this week against the Chargers, Matt's spot on. And Jameis is just a fun quarterback to have in fantasy. You know, he's the 30 TD, 30 interception outcome guy that could happen anytime. But if I've got Purdy, who's on a bye, or, Love, who's kind of sporting a groin injury, I certainly would not be against starting Jameis Winston over one of those guys this week. The other guys that Matt mentions at quarterback are Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, Bo Nix, and Mason Rudolph. I love Russell Wilson's upcoming schedule. And, Matthew Stafford's got kind of a tough schedule. It's kind of half and half. Bo Nix is a guy I love down the road. He's got good rushing upside, perfect for 2 QB leagues. Mason Rudolph's kind of a deep dive for me. I might even, if I have to go with Mason Rudolph, I'm probably might be looking for a different position for my super flex. Moving on to running backs, his ad of the week is Tyrone Tracy. And Matt says he should be added in all leagues. Maybe a little bit early for me in 10-teamers, but absolutely anything in 12 plus. I think Tracy has kind of grabbed the bull by the horns in New York. And he's had 3 of his last 4 games. He's had 17 carries or more. The other guys that Matt was looking at running back is Isaac Guerendo in San Francisco. He's on a bye this week, but the upcoming games are certainly favorable. And if Jordan Mason's got any, time off, I still think he's the number 2 guy there. But if for some reason Jordan Mason isn't able to come back after the bye, I love Guerendo as a bench stash. Jaleel McLaughlin and Sean Tucker, probably in the order that Matt puts them. I like those guys. Tucker's probably got the best schedule going in the next 4 weeks. Wide receivers, his ad of the week is Cedric Tillman, and I don't see why you wouldn't just grab Cedric Tillman as a prospective stash in all leagues. I mean, he's had 21 targets in the last 2 weeks. 15 for 180 and 2 touchdowns in that time. Kind of a rough schedule coming up. He's got the Chargers, the bye. At New Orleans is nice, but then he's got Pittsburgh, Denver, and Pittsburgh again. So kind of keep that in mind. The next guy he mentions is Bateman, but he's kind of mentioning him as I think it's over. And for me, I don't mind grabbing Bateman for the next 2 weeks, but I think once Deontay Johnson gets settled in there, he's the 2 guy. Quentin Johnston is another guy that Matt mentions. Keep an eye on his injury. Darius Slayton has had a couple of 100-yard games in the last 4 games. Got decent chemistry with Daniel Jones. A couple of other guys he mentions are 2 guys on Tampa Bay, Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard. Not real crazy about those guys. Maybe out of all the guys that Matt mentions, those are the 2 guys I'm looking at last. And then he mentions Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall, and those are probably the guys. Once you get beyond Tillman and maybe Quentin Johnston, those are the 2 guys I'd be interested in the most for San Francisco, and they've got a decent schedule coming up. And then he goes to his tight ends, and his tight end ad of the week is Cade Otton. And for me, I already started Cade Otton and Scott Fishbowl this past weekend over Sam Laporta. And, of course, as soon as I remove Sam Laporta from my lineup, he actually does something. But Cade Otton was just he's been on fire the last 4 weeks. So yeah, he's a grab in any league to me that you need a tight end spot and you don't have like one of the big guys. I think he's a top 10 tight end at this point. Hunter Henry has averaged 11.25 points over the last 4 weeks, and he's certainly serviceable. So. And that takes care of Matt's article.
Jamie has a question down here chiming in. I'll stick with you, Dave. Parkinson or likely rest of season at tight end?
My concern with Parkinson is eventually Tyler Higbee's going to come back. Likely is probably going to be bumpier, but I like the ceiling of likely over Parkinson. If I'm just looking for a guy for the next 2 or 3 weeks and you want just a solid floor, Parkinson's a good guy to have.
Jeff, thoughts on the waiver ads for this week?
Yeah, no, I do like him. A lot of them some repeat names from last week for us. I do like the Jameis pickup I think for the rest of the season. I think he's gonna just take that role and run with it. This feels like Joe Flacco last year again. I know they don't have Cooper, though, but they've got some nice weapons on the outside, and Njoku's still really solid tight end. The Browns are just fun again to me. I was wrong on Flacco. Early on, I was like, why are you going to get Flacco? And then we saw what he did, and now he's relevant in Indianapolis. Can't see why Jameis doesn't do the same. One other receiver I want to add to that mix is Elijah Moore. I know he's kind of resurfaced. He did lead the team in targets last week with 12.
That's my bad. Matt did mention Elijah Moore, and he's another guy. He's another guy that I would be looking very carefully.
Yeah, I think Tillman is already, I think, plus 70% in many formats, 70% ownership. So I like Elijah Moore. I don't know. It's just a fun little Browns team there that I like. I think Bo Nix is also another intriguing player. I know we talked about him, Dave, earlier. And then one other receiver. This is kind of a wild card with the news today, but Xavier Leggett. I know Bryce Young is starting. We'll see what happens with Andy Dalton, but he led the team with 7 targets against a good Denver defense. He already has a game with 10-plus targets, and Deontay Johnson averaged 8 targets a game, so that's available now. So I think he's rostered in like 12% of leagues in Yahoo, I think, so probably lower than many other. And then, surprisingly, the Panthers have a great second half schedule for receivers, so another player to look out for as well.
100% behind that. Jalen Coker's another name I'm keeping my eye on.
A couple other guys here. Elijah Moore, you just mentioned, Jeff, and Ricky Pearsall for the 49ers. Niners are on bye this week, but coming back. Debo's banged up. Ayuk obviously out. We'll see what happens with McCaffrey. Marius is asking in a 16-team league, 2 16-team leagues here already today. Wow. Pearsall or Elijah Moore rest of the year?
I'm going to go Elijah Moore. I think it's more target share for Elijah Moore than Pearsall. I think Kittle's still going to get his. Debo will probably be fine. CMC's back. I don't know what Pearsall looks like.
Dave, thoughts?
Yeah, I'd try to keep both, but I agree with Jeff. I would take Moore over Pearsall because to me, Pearsall's more a wide receiver 3 and Moore's more a wide receiver 2.
There you go. And Ricky Pearsall has been fun. He's also a special teams guy, so he's getting some touches there. We don't care about that in fantasy usually, but he's getting his work. I think that he's valuable for the team on special teams and then gets a couple runs where Elijah Moore, I think, could carve out an actual role there. All right. Feel free to chime in the rest of your questions. We are going to move on to the trade targets here in just 1 second. But again, I want to welcome everybody this evening to the Razzball Fantasy Football Show. This is a Week 9 waiver ads and trade targets episode. Everything on X is Razzball NFL. You could subscribe right here to YouTube, Razzball Fantasy Football YouTube channel. Hit the bell, subscribe. Make sure you catch every article and every episode. Hear from us. All the episodes are getting repurposed on the podcast anywhere you listen to your audio. That's the Razzball Fantasy Football Podcast, and all of our articles and exclusive content and tools available for you at football.razzball.com. Dave just recited more or less, obviously kind of paraphrased in your own words, Dave, but Matt's information that he dug out there. Matt, again, away for the next couple episodes on a vacation himself, but you had kind of recapped his article that is available at football.razzball.com. So anybody interested in those names can go check out Matt's article live right now. Jeff also had his weekly recap dropped yesterday, and Dave's coming up later in the week as well. And we have everybody else available for you at football.razzball.com. Okay, I'm going to drop a couple trade targets here. I already talked about Tank Dell as one of my buys. I wouldn't, go sell the farm by any means, but with Stephon Diggs out for the season and that Texans offense really needed a boost here, I think Tank Dell could hopefully resurface as he did last year. So I mentioned him already. Jalen McMillan, we've mentioned another couple last few weeks and waivers to start, and now he's a staple there for the Bucs. Trey Palmer and Sterling Shepard still getting a couple looks, but Jalen McMillan is by far the number one right now for Tampa Bay, with Chris Godwin out for the season and Mike Evans out for a handful of weeks as well. 8 targets for just 35 yards, but 86% of the dropbacks. And we know that Baker Mayfield is arguably the hottest quarterback in the NFL, outside of my boy Bo Nix, of course. But he has been absolutely crushing it. And this offense, which had been kind of run-centric last year and to start this season, is really pass first. And so they're doing very well in Tampa Bay. So for me, Jalen McMillan is that number one wide receiver. He is I think a name that no one's really super excited yet. If you have him on your roster, you're pumped. Otherwise, he's just kind of a fun name that you see on Sundays. He's not really popping off of charts right now with popularity because he was overshadowed, obviously, until the last couple of weeks. So I think you still get him kind of on the cheap. So I would go do that if possible. But he's got about 200 air yards over the last 2 weeks. We love our air yards here on the show. So Tank Dell and Jalen McMillan will be my buys, both wide receivers. I'll go to 2 running backs that I'm looking to sell, and I'll preface this where we don't have a lot of running backs to play with. So let's not get crazy here. But if you're running back rich somehow, you have 2 stalwart running backs, and then you have a flex guy you're floating around, or you had somebody you picked up off waivers that's worked out or something. Jalen Warren came back from your team, whatever. You can play a little bit. Then Kareem Hunt and Tank Bigsby are 2 different guys that I would probably move on from, but Rachaad White is going to be that other name as well. So maybe 3 running backs here. Kareem Hunt is simply just, I don't think he's as special as he was. Obviously, he's a rookie. He had that gruesome injury and he came back. He's fine because he's in the Chiefs offense. I don't see that continuing necessarily. And eventually Isaiah Pacheco is coming back. The eventual return there, they have their bye behind them, right? Which is kind of a selling point, I think, where you don't have to worry about that. And whoever the Hunt person is that gets Kareem Hunt can use him for another week or 2, but I just kind of want to offload him while I can. Samaje Perine, Carson Steele also getting some work there. He did have a touchdown last time he played, so I would like to kind of sell that a little bit. So again, don't just give away running backs, but Kareem Hunt would be somebody that would give away so that you can get a topper end wide receiver if possible. I mentioned Tank Bigsby. I won't stick on him too much. I just feel like, with ETN and everything going on in Jacksonville and the wide receiver room kind of a mess, it's a bit difficult there with Tank Bigsby, and he has some big games, but he's another name I think you can sell high right now. Rachaad White, I feel like I've had on this segment of this episode about 4 times this season, and I keep telling myself I'm not going to keep mentioning it, but then he's still like 80% rostered from teams who are not doing well because you keep playing him. He's the type of player that's really difficult to have on your roster because the PPR upside, what he can do, what he did last year, finishing a running back 7. So you keep thinking it'll happen. It's not happening, right? Like Bucky Irving is not a backup running back. He's, in my opinion, of course, I'm biased as a Duck, but he is the best running back in the backfield, and he's performing as such as well. Then you have Sean Tucker also playing well, and then you have this passing game that is elite for the Buccaneers right now. There just isn't a ton of room for Rachaad White, and I said this preseason when he was one of my busts for the season based on draft capital, he doesn't have the big play upside. He's a PPR guy, right? Like he's Alvin Kamara volume without the explosion that Alvin Kamara gives you. So I just don't like that very much. They're splitting 50-50 carries. Bucky Irving is out snapping him. He has 84 total yards on 16 touches last week. Bucky Irving has a missed tackle on 40% of his carries, which is tops in the league right now among rookies and certainly among running backs in general. And he has target highs, receptions, and yards after catch as well over the last 4 weeks. So Bucky Irving just is the better running back, whether he's getting more snaps or not. Sean Tucker's getting work. Pass offense elite for Tampa Bay as well. Rachaad White, I think you can sell the PPR upside. You can sell decent work, but he's a running back I'm looking to get rid of along with Tank Bigsby and Kareem Hunt. And again, Tank Dell and Jalen McMillan would be wide receivers that I'm looking to acquire. It's a lot of names there. Jeff, will go to you first. Any feedback on the trade targets?
Yeah, no, I do like the Tank Dell. I think because Nico Collins is not too far away. I think like 2 weeks away maybe. So I think we may see that duo back as they looked last year, and they were dynamic. And so if Tank Dell gets back to that role, like you said, get him now early before he blows up. This is the time to do it now. I know with the news, people may not trust that all the way, but I think now is the time to acquire Dell. McMillan, we talked about him last week. I'm still on that train. The Bucs passed a lot. They're elite, but they pass a lot. They just keep passing with Baker. And then I love their strength of schedule. So McMillan should get better, get more targets. I do think when Evans does come back, it should hopefully allow him. We got some breaking news.
Go ahead.
The Vikings traded for Cam Robinson from the Jags. The Jags are selling the O-line away. Yikes. So there you go. Broke some news on the show. I'd love to see that. But with McMillan, I think when Evans comes back, that will free up him from the defense and get some better targets.
Cam Robinson, don't have a lot of offensive line notes, but let's stick on that just for a second. Christian Darrisaw, who's unbelievable for the Vikings, has been beat up, and since he got hurt, Sam Darnold has not been the first 4 weeks Sam Darnold, right? This offense, so they needed the protection there. Cam Robinson needs to get out of Jacksonville. So for the third or fourth time in the last 15 years or so, the Jags are trending up, plateau. Come down, sell. Man, I'm sorry to hear that for our Jacksonville fans here on the broadcast. Any other thoughts on the trade targets there, Jeff, before we go to Dave?
Yeah, no, lastly, I was surprised on the Kareem Hunt call. And then I looked more into it. He's only averaging 3.7 yards a carry. He's getting a lot of touches, but he's not really efficient. And with Pacheco coming back, I just don't even know, even if he doesn't really come back or isn't the same, I don't know if Hunt can maintain 20 carries a game and be efficient for fantasy. He's going to break down, and that means they're going to have to give more carries elsewhere. So I do like that call, and you can sell him high right now.
Yeah, the efficiency is what bothers me. We said that about Najee Harris, though, just to play devil's advocate on my own stance. We said that about Najee early in the season, right? He gets a lot of touches. He isn't very effective. 3 consecutive 100-yard rushing games for Najee Harris now, right? So maybe it just takes these guys a little bit, let the offense click. They're coming off the bye again 2 weeks ago with the Chiefs. You want Chiefs pieces, right? That's what's a selling point too. But I just feel like Pacheco coming back, I want to sell high while I can, while the getting's good on Kareem Hunt potentially. Dave, quick thoughts on the trade targets.
Yeah, I love the Tank Dell call, especially with Diggs out for the year. Collins should be. They're talking about Collins coming back not this week but next week. I actually think that's a plus for Tank Dell because right now his running mates are Xavier Hutchinson and John Mechie, and those are unproven guys. And if I want to take the passing game away, I'm going to concentrate on Tank Dell if he's by himself. As far as McMillan goes, I think McMillan go more for a down the road type of trade. But Jeff's point is you want to get him now before Mike Evans gets back and take some of the heat off of the defense for the other receivers. I like the Hunt call because eventually Pacheco is going to be back, and the best case scenario there is it's a split. Right. The only reason I'm selling Rachaad White is because I didn't really get what I was paying for. You didn't pay like big time RB1 numbers when you drafted him, but he certainly isn't giving those back. He's still probably getting as much run as Bucky Irving, but like you said, Sky, Bucky Irving has got more bang for the buck. So, I like the calls on both of those things. It's kind of hard to let go of running backs at this point, especially since they're so hard to find as flexes, right?
It is. And I'm hoping when I do that you're kind of catching, obviously, look, this goes without saying, I hope, to our listeners, but to anybody unsure or confused here, you want to sell high, right? So any of these guys who are projecting high, like Najee Harris has been on fire, right? But if you have somehow wealth at running back and he's one of your guys, he's probably the one you could sell the highest right now. And do we expect Najee Harris to run for 100 yards every week with Jaylen Warren coming back, Pickens picking up, Russ looking amazing all of a sudden? Probably not. If
they play against the New York teams every week, he could very well go for 100 yards every week.
Yeah, fair enough. But what I'm saying is when teams are spiking or players are spiking, you want to tend to have that. Now, Kareem Hunt is not spiked by any means. Tank Dell has rarely even shown anything yet this year compared to last year. None of these guys are like at their highest peak per se. I'm just feeling like if they're trending down, I want to get off the train before it goes away. You know what I mean?
That's right. So let's say you're selling Kareem Hunt. What are you looking for in return?
I'm probably looking to, honestly, Tank Dell would be sweet.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's going to take that much. You know what I mean?
No, you might be able to get him for Hunt and another piece, right?
Sure. Because again, I'm selling Chiefs offense, starting running back, which he is. Pacheco's not back yet. Kareem Hunt could be amazing for another 3 weeks.
Yep.
Yeah, who knows? Yep. But he also might not be.
Yeah.
For any reason, you know?
Yeah, give me the guy I like better in the fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, again, Kareem Hunt could be trending down or at least plateauing at best, whereas Tank Dell should be, and I'm just mentioning Tank Dell. Jalen McMillan would be another one. Obviously, those are two guys I'm looking for, but those guys are trending up, and Jalen McMillan's just on his way to stratosphere right now. Whether he continues that in his career, we don't know, and those guys come back next year, and Godwin will be gone and all this stuff in Tampa. But as of right now, we play, in redraft leagues, especially we're playing for this week, next week, and looking ahead to the playoffs. And Jalen McMillan is that guy, and I think Tank Dell fits the mold as well. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we get out of here?
I'll just say last week was interesting. It was National Tight End Day on Sunday, and would you believe it, we had 15 tight end touchdowns, the most this season. Little fun fact.
Love that. And actually, the tight ends have been blowing up since week 7 here. So the last 2 weeks, they've been playing quite well. Tight ends is a really difficult position. I thought about putting up guys like TJ Hawkinson and maybe even Mark Andrews based on this Deontay Johnson news and stuff as a sell, but you just can't. You can't do that. You can't. We just said Sam Laporta, right, was number 1 tight end in certain settings last year, and he just hasn't been Sam Laporta. Now all of a sudden, Dave, we appreciate your help there.
Yeah. In a game where Jared Goff, or the Lions, I should say, as a whole, threw for like 90 gross yards, Laporta had 6 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown.
Perfect. So Dave's here for you, folks. Based on his start sits, you can set your lineup accordingly as well.
Go the other way.
It's been great.
Finding sits right now is really tough. I mean, after a slow start to the year for scoring, it's been pinball numbers. It's Tecmo Bowl time. There was just this past weekend, teams scored 4. I mean, the games were 4 points higher than they were year over year.
Yeah. And wild enough, last week, I'm sorry, in the 16 games, we had 15 one-score games. The only one that was a blowout was the Lions there, which is pretty unprecedented. But, it's been a wild season. We started off that first month with just wild injuries. Obviously, injuries happen in the NFL, but they seem to be happening more and more and more, and guys are staying out longer and those kind of things. So you have a lot of unproven talent. So I guarantee you the team you drafted is not your roster now. And it's the point of the season where you're either sitting pretty at 7-1, 6-2, something like that, and you're getting ready for the playoffs. You're sitting on Christian McCaffrey, or you're buying him, or somebody else coming back healthy or whatever. Great, make those moves. If you're on the other side of that, you got to make a move in a week or two, or it's done, right? I mean, all of a sudden, gentlemen, we're only 5, depending on your settings, which is to start in week 15 for your playoffs. But we're only 8 weeks away or so from
we're at the halfway
point. The playoffs.
We're at the halfway point of the season.
Yep.
Right. Week 9 is it. Once we get past week 9, it's 9 more weeks.
There we go. All right, gentlemen, we do have some bye weeks back again. The Niners and Steelers getting off of some W's. They both got the week off here this week. Everybody else is in play. You can, again, check all the articles and all the exclusive tools at football.rasball.com. Follow us on X at Rasball NFL. You can follow Dave Cruz at Cruiser, CREWSER128 on X. That's Jeff at Jefferson__221. And you can find me as well, Sky Guasco, SkyGuasco. Subscribe right here to the YouTube channel and make sure you download the podcast as well anywhere you listen to your audio. That's the Rasball Fantasy Football Podcast. For everybody tuning in with us tonight, Josh and Jamie and Marius and everybody else, we appreciate you. Thanks so much for hanging out with us. We'll catch you again Sunday morning. Make sure to hang out with us 2 hours before kickoff for the Start Sit Show. And we got episodes for you the rest of the week with the rest of the guys. We hope you have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of the World Series while you can, baseball fans. We'll catch you next time right here on the Rasball Fantasy Football Show. For Dave and Jeff, I'm your host, Sky Guasco. We are out of here.